3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Fighting Moose Podcast. I'm your host and narrator, Jason Hendrickson. This is a podcast where I retell stories, some fictional and some historical, that can be enjoyed by people of all ages. As we are progressing through spring and getting closer to summer, I have been seeing Johnny Chuck and his family all over the place. One of them is still residing in my neighbor's woodpile, and I saw another one by the creek by my house. Along with the groundhog next to the creek, I did see our friend Rattles the Kingfisher sitting in a tree, so that's exciting. Today we are going to read the story titled The Haughty Ground Hog, which comes to us from the book Among the Forest People, written by Clara Dillingham Pierson. As always, I hope that you are getting outside and seeing some of our bird and animal friends as they become more active with warmer weather. If for some reason you are unable to get outside, look out your window and see what you can see, or you can search for wildlife cameras on the internet. They are all over the place, and some of them are really cool to watch, like the bears in Alaska. Now, let's turn to today's story. I hope you enjoy. Let's begin.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The Haughty Ground Hog. Not far from the home of the rabbits was another burrow where the groundhog lived, and there was a very kindly feeling between the neighbors. They liked the same food, and as there was plenty for all, they often nibbled together near the edge of the forest. The little rabbits were fond of him and liked to listen to his stories. Once, the biggest little rabbit had run into the groundhog's burrow by mistake when he was frightened, and that was the beginning of a great friendship between them. They were a queer-looking couple, for the rabbit was small and quick and dainty, while the groundhog, with a stout body covered with thick reddish fur, his broad flat head, and his short legs, was a clumsy fellow. To be sure, he could get out of sight quickly if he had to, but he never scampered around and kicked up his heels for the fun of it, as the rabbits did. He was too dignified to do that. He came of an old family, and he could remember who his grandfather was. There were but few people in the forest who could do that, so of course he could not frisk like his neighbors. Perhaps if the groundhog had not belonged to so old a family, he might have had a better time. Yet the thought that he could remember his grandfather was a great pleasure to him, and when he was talking, he would often remark in the most careless way, "As my grandfather used to say," or, "That reminds me of something my grandfather once did." Some people said that he did this to show off, but it may be that they were envious. However that may have been, the groundhog was certainly a haughty fellow, and if he had not been so gentle and kind a neighbor, people would not have liked him. Only once had he been known to get angry, and that was when a saucy young chipmunk had spoken of him as a woodchuck. "Woodchuck, woodchuck," he had grunted. "You young bushy-tail, I am a groundhog, and the groundhog family lived in this forest long before you ever opened your eyes. People with good manners do not call us woodchucks. We do not like the name. My grandfather could not endure it." It was not very long after this that he told the wondering young rabbits about his grandfather. When talking, the grandfather rested by the edge of his burrow, sitting on his haunches and waving his queer little forepaws whenever he told anything especially important, and this was the story. Perhaps you may have heard me speak of my grandfather. He was a groundhog worth seeing. He was large, and although, when I knew him, the black fur on his back was streaked with gray, he was still handsome. He was clever too. I have often heard my father say that he could dig the deepest and best burrow in the forest. And then he had such fine manners. There was not another groundhog in the country around who could eat as noisily as he, and it is said that when he was courting my grandmother, she chose him because of the elegant way in which he sat up on his haunches. I have been told, children, that I am very much like him. Just here, a red-headed woodpecker gave a loud rat-a-tat-tat on the tree above the groundhog's head, and there was a look around her bill as though she wanted to laugh. The groundhog slowly turned his head to look at her as she flew away. "Quite a good-looking young person," he said, "but badly brought up. She should know better than to disturb those who are talking. What was I saying, children?" "You were telling how your grandfather sat up on his haunches," said the smallest little rabbit. So I was. I must tell you how my grandfather came to know the world so well. When he was only a young fellow, he made his home for a time by a hen house, and so heard the talk of the barnyard people. Once he heard them tell how the farmer watched on a certain winter day to see my grandfather come out of his burrow. Of course, you children all know how we groundhogs do. In the fall, we are very fat, and when the cold weather comes, we go to sleep in our burrows to wait for spring. Sometimes we awaken and stretch, but we go to sleep again very soon. Then, when spring comes, we are slender and have healthy appetites. The hens treated my grandfather with great politeness, and the black Brahma cock showed plainly how honored they felt to have him there. They said that they were so glad my grandfather stayed out of his burrow a while on this winter day when the farmer was watching, because they were in a hurry for warm weather. My grandfather did not know what they meant by that, but he was too wise to say so, and he found out by asking questions that if a groundhog leaves his burrow on this certain day in winter and sees his shadow and goes back again, it will be cold for a long time after that. If he does not see his shadow and stays out, it will soon be warm. You see now, children, how important our family is, and yet we are so modest that we had not even known that we made the weather until the hens told my grandfather. But that is the way. Really great people often think the least of themselves. "And do you make the weather?" asked the smallest little rabbit. "I suppose we do," said the groundhog, with a smile. "It is a great care. I often say to myself, shall I have it warm or shall I have it cold? It worries me so that sometimes I can hardly eat." "And how do you know when the day comes for you to make the weather?" said the smallest little rabbit. Well, I am sorry to say that my grandfather did not find out exactly what day it is that they watch for us, so I have to guess at that. But to think that we groundhogs make the weather for all the other people. It is worth a great deal to belong to such a family. I suppose I might have been a weasel, a fox, an owl, or an oriole. And it is a great thing to have known one's grandfather. The little rabbits sat very still, wishing they had known their grandfather, when suddenly the biggest one said, "If you should stay out of your burrow when that day comes, and another groundhog should go back into his burrow, how would the weather know what to do?" "Children," said the old groundhog, "I think your mother is calling to you. You might better go to see. Goodbye." And he waved his paw politely. The 7 little rabbits scampered away, but their mother was not calling them. She wasn't even there, and when they went back, they couldn't find the groundhog. They wondered how he happened to make such a mistake. The red-headed woodpecker, who came along at about that time, twisted her head on one side and said, "Made a mistake, rat-a-tat-tat, not he."
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fighting Moose Podcast. Please join us next time as we read another exciting story. Today's music was provided by the artist Analog by Nature, and the audio clips were provided from NASA. For more information to download and or listen to audio or materials from all our recordings, or to contact us, please visit www.thefightingmoose.com, or you can follow the links in the show notes. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcast or on iTunes, and tell a friend. Thank you for your patronage, and as always, try and do a random act of kindness every day.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and has come to a final stop.